What's going on, y'all? How y'all doing? Welcome back to the 1025 podcast. This is episode 8. I'm Jordan along with Achonti and Kristen. And in this episode, Achonti is going to be our moderator. Achonti, take it away.
Hello, you guys. Nice to see everybody. Today we'll be talking about the Cuties Texas indictments, the Megan Thee Stallion SNL performance, and the ongoing Tory Lanez case, media bias and polarized politics, and voting. Okay. So firstly, I'm sure we've all heard about this Cuties indictment. It's been really strange, but basically the Texas grand jury is accusing Cuties of showing lewd material and the over-sexualization of adults that are under the age of 18. And while I don't necessarily think that was necessary, I think the main point is that we missed the potency of this coming of age film. Do you guys think that they should have indicted them? Do you guys think we should be charging this film as much as we are?
Personally, my personal opinion, I feel like they shouldn't have indicted nobody on this film because no person, surrounding this film. Main reason why is because I feel like art cannot be, like construed and all that type of stuff. Like the artist should literally just make it and put it out there, you know what I'm saying? Of course, a lot of great art is controversial, but I feel like they're doing too much. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually wanted to read what they stated in the actual indictment papers. The Tyler County Grand Jury, which is a county in Texas, has indicted Netflix as an entity, and it was filed on September 23rd for the lewd exhibition of genitals or pubic area of a clothed or partially clothed child who is younger than 18 years of age at the time of the visual material was created, which appeals to the prudent interest of sex. So basically, they charged him with the film having too much sex appeal. And I think they missed the nuances of the film. A lot of people have been criticizing the creator because the film apparently has no nuances. However, I feel like these people just look at the actual panel that Netflix put out and they clicked it and they expected something different than what Netflix was marketing. They expected an hour and 45 minutes of just extra sex appeal and content. However, the film is very nuanced. It's a multi-generational conversation of what it means to be a woman and exhibit femaleness in the digital age. And I personally think that anyone who is criticizing this film hasn't even watched it. Did you guys actually see how they marketed it? That's why everyone's getting mad, but they haven't watched the film.
Yeah, I watched the trailer and it was very it turned me off from watching the film.
Now I've seen the posters of the film. The original posters that were made for the French release. I think it was at like the Cannes Film Festival. It didn't have like the very, girls in those positions. You know what I'm saying? It was just like 3 girls running through the street. When Netflix brought it over, that's when they was like, okay, I want one girl to squat, I want another girl to be looking very attractive. So that I feel like that's the thing that a viewer watched and they already had a fixed like consensus on it.
That's exactly what happened, Jordan. They saw that panel and they clicked it and thought for the next 1 hour and 45 minutes, I'm going to be petrified. The story so layered, it was done so well, and it resonated with me as a young woman who's grown, well, probably you, Kristen, who's grown up in the digital age. It's just essentially you're trying to emulate the things that are being pushed on you all the time, and we do them in unhealthy ways. But it's disgusting that everyone wants to care about it now. And they're charging the film with pedophilia. However, the film is through the perspective of a 13-year-old girl, and the woman who directed it actually got the consensus or interviewed a variety of, I think it was like 200 preteen children about how do you feel growing up in this technological age where you're always being charged with images of what you should look like. Yeah. And she created the film through that perspective, and that's what happened. And if adults are getting mad, they need to sit down and have a long conversation about the things we're allowing our children to see and be around. Like, it's just, I'm being serious. It's just ridiculous. You can't get mad at her for sharing personally what also, what is intertwined, not only her story, but our stories, essentially. And if people are mad, we need to fix what is the deeper issue, essentially. This film was a critique of the hypersexualization of young girls. It did not actually hypersexualize them. It was a perspective film, and we disregarded it.
Absolutely. And another thing that a lot of people kind of don't really understand about this film is that this is a French film. This is very different. French films are very different compared to American films, you know, where they appeal to a mainstream demographic. You know what I'm saying? If this was released in America, then yeah, it would. I mean, of course, I feel like not a lot of people would think about it as much, but since it's from like this other country, people are like, okay, what the hell are they showing over here? You know what I'm saying? This is from, I mean, of course, France is in Europe, and this is coming from the same country that enjoys Game of Thrones, which has sex and violence every episode. But I feel like they don't really know, American moviegoers, they don't know the certain themes that are portrayed in films over at France because they're not really used to that being brought over in America. They're not used to American filmmakers telling these type of stories.
Yeah, precisely that. So if you think it was an American film, how do you think the plot would have, well, have you guys even watched the film?
I've seen certain like clips of it.
Okay, so in the marketing, did you actually did they market the girls like individually, or did it only show the scenes of them dancing? Because out of all 145 minutes, they only dance and do all that lewd stuff for about 8 minutes. That shows me that these people haven't watched the film.
Right.
So
it mainly just showed them dancing.
Yeah.
It mainly just showed them dancing.
Yeah, and that was only a fraction. So do you, if it was an American film, how do you think it would have been produced or marketed? Because we othered this film and its creator essentially. But if it was an American film, keep talking, Jordan.
Okay, so I feel like if America made this film, it would be more of like a PG, sort of like a Disney Channel type of thing where they would try to water down a lot of the themes that were happening in the story, like, you know, being a woman growing up. You know what I'm saying? I don't think they would tell the story as raw and as mature as the director wanted it to be.
Yeah.
I actually disagree because I think America likes shock value. You see that on TMZ, MTV, etc. We just like a story that pops.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, definitely. This is an interesting coming of age film, one that I'm not used to. I grew up loving like 13 going on 30, and the most recent Lady Bird film. It was pretty, not necessarily realistic, but it was more sanguine, more sappy, more like, I'm a teenager, I'm a preteen girl, I'm trying to be a young woman. Oh my gosh, like all that lame stuff. But this film, like Jordan said, it was very genuine. It was vulnerable. It showed the complexities of these young women, and people just can't take it. They want us to just be so blank, just 2D. I love the fact that she created this film. It resonated with me. I enjoyed it a lot. I watched it from beginning to end. And another reason why I don't think people really actually watch the film and are critiquing it, because at the end we see her recognize what she's essentially doing, the main character, that she's just putting a mask on to fit in, but not really being herself. So towards the end of the film, they're at this dance competition, which is probably what you guys saw. And in the middle of it, she starts crying. And it's just really realist, kind of like a realist thing where she looks around at the audience. She's just like, this isn't what I want to do. So she runs back home, and at the end of the film, we see her jump roping with some neighborhood kids, and that's it. That's all. She goes back to her home, and she comes back into herself, and not this hypersexualized version of herself. So that proves to me people didn't really watch the film, because we see it's layered and it's a full circle movie.
Yeah, and they instead wanted to jump on the bandwagon of hating this film.
Yeah. But there was a lot of self-awareness and self-realization, which is what I don't think we see a lot in American coming of age films.
Yeah.
It has a full circle moment, but the characters don't necessarily change for the better. You kind of see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. But they're charging Netflix as an entity, so I don't think the actual director is going to have any criminal charges put against her. I think this case is more symbolic than it is actually fueled by questioning whether or not pedophilia is running rampant in America. It's more symbolic because we are in a politically tense time. And I think they only did this for the symbolism. I really hope that the director is in charge of anything. And I really hope, because the fine for a corporation with a criminal charge like this would only be $20,000, but still it's too symbolic. They shouldn't be doing this. Yeah, we're not asking unnecessary questions. Do you guys have anything else to say about this? Not really. No, okay. So our next topic of conversation is Megan Thee Stallion's SNL performance and the ongoing Tory Lanez case. So firstly, I'd like to ask you guys, did you actually watch her SNL performance?
Yes.
You watched it? Okay. So do you think that people should be using their bodies to push a political message?
You want to go first, Kristen?
Yes, actually. I don't think we should be using our bodies to push political message. However, I believe she did it because I believe that she knows that's the only way people listen. Because people didn't listen when she portrayed herself as this college girl who's a law student and everything. People weren't listening. But people were listening when she was up on stage.
Yeah. What were you about to say, Jordan?
Well, and I'm gonna tread lightly on this one. I was talking to you about this performance a few days ago, right? And me personally, I do agree with Kristen saying that people shouldn't use their bodies to do a political message. However, when I watched this performance and she has the vocal snippet of Malcolm X saying, the most disrespected, unprotected woman in America is the Black woman, I was like, okay, I like that. I like that little ad. Beyonce did that in Lemonade, right? Thing is, though, when you do that and then the next scene later you're dancing very provocatively and all that type of stuff, it's like not a lot of people will really take your message seriously. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying, oh, she has to be like, oh, this, studious, woman. She wears, covers her body and all that stuff. And no, you can come across to me as just your authentic self without trying to push or force a message. Get what I'm saying? I felt like during this performance, and this is just my opinion, she was trying to force a message rather than just, how can I say this? Rather than just being her. And I get that the woman on stage, that's her personality, but with a topic like this, I feel like she should have handled it better. That's just me.
All right, so we're definitely finding ourselves asking a lot from these artists during this intense socio-political climate right now. There is a lot going on, and we are demanding them to speak out. Megan, I think her performance was just fine. She's using her resources, which is essentially her body and her performance and her art. And I can't necessarily get mad about the way that she does it because we all have this conversation with each other. It's the fact that Black female rappers are kind of trapped in a box. So with that being said, she was just using the resources at hand. But one thing that made me extremely happy is that a lot of Black YouTubers, specifically Black feminine YouTubers, were asking these artists, or like kind of proposing the question to us, do we want more sophisticated content from them? Do we want them to actually speak out in a meaningful way about things they sort of sweep under the rug? Because the discourse of intersectionality has been going on since Reconstruction or post-slavery. We could look at Harriet Jacobs, the story of a slave girl. And we're asking these artists and Black women in general to present their stories to us, to present the fact that because I'm a Black and I'm also a woman, these are the things that I have to go through. Yeah. So what I'm trying to, this leads me to say that Megan Thee Stallion not only did that performance, but she also came out with a New York Times article giving her testimony to what actually happened to her. Because for the longest, people have just been proposing like, oh, she didn't speak out because she didn't want him to get exiled, or she didn't speak out, we don't really know what happened. How could she have gotten shot in the foot, like all that stuff. But now we have hard literature about what happened to her, and she has contributed in a meaningful way. For me personally, I think she has. because I can't necessarily get mad about the performance because she's tending to that audience. However, in the New York Times article, she was tending to the general American people. Not everyone's listening to Megan Thee Stallion. Like, she's popping, but that article was more potent to me, and I wish people would focus on that more. Even though it came after the performance, because at first I was kind of like, oh, again? Like, we're doing this again? Like, seriously, kind of like what Jordan said. But I'm actually really proud of her for writing that article. And yeah. So lastly, we kind of just talked about this. Was the performance appropriate considering the severity of the situation? Like, considering how severe this was in context with the whole Breonna Taylor case, like how?
Yeah, I just feel like even this whole situation, from Tory Lanez dropping that album to Meg doing this whole performance on Saturday Night Live, I feel like a lot of this stuff is kind of manufactured in a way. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't, and I understand that celebrity beef is usually very manufactured. Okay, Jay-Z cheats on Beyonce. What does Beyonce do? Drop Lemonade. What's his response? Drop 444. To me, that was very like, okay, y'all kind of doing album sales off of pain, but what else? Same with Tory. I'm like, okay, you drop this album, you're profiting off of pain, and then Meg is like, okay, I'm gonna do this performance where I basically do the same thing I do many times, and it's like she was trying to. It felt forced to me, right? Now, granted, in light of the Breonna Taylor situation, I feel like Meg should have just like maybe made a video where it was just like, hey, this is what happened to me. Justice for Breonna Taylor. But I feel like she shouldn't have got on Saturday Night Live and started shaking her butt and doing all that type of stuff. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Did you have anything else to did you have anything to say about that, Kristen? It's a weird time.
Yeah.
It's weird. What were you about to say?
I don't even know.
I'm sorry. Okay, so lastly, I'm just gonna finish off this topic with this. 2020 has definitely been like for reform, and especially reconceptualizing how we are politically engaged. However, I don't expect too much from these artists. We have been, since like about 2015, with the videos I've been watching and the creators I've been interacting with, we've been kind of demanding these artists to be vocal about the things that are happening to them and not just sweep it under the rug, mainly for the purpose so people can relate to it and so we can have civil discourse. It's weird that this would have happened to someone who's so high profile, but it did, and it can be generalized to how to the issues that are happening within our own community. So I think given the political and social tension right now, what she did was more than enough. And that New York Times article just topped it off very well. But at the same time, what are people still going to be infusing their art with a political message next year? Or is this just a fad of 2020? Like, how long do you think this is going to last? But I can't necessarily say that it won't last for Megan because she is a victim of violence, essentially. So I don't know how this is going to transform her career. But do you think how artists communicate politically from now is going to be changed from now on? Like, whether or not they politicize their work. Do you understand the question, kind of?
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to be changed because of 2020 and our expectations for artists to speak out?
I feel like it's not, because there are many artists who this year they've made a political message. For example, the rapper Lil Baby, he made this song called The Bigger Picture in light of the George Floyd incident. And then I read an article a few weeks ago where it was like, he's not going to make songs like that anymore. You know what I'm saying? He just wanted to make drop this single, say what he had to say, and then, go back to rapping about all the other stuff. Now, as far as, artists doing all that, me personally, I don't go to artists for my political agendas and messages and all of that. I usually go to the news and stuff. But I feel like that's still going to be a recurring theme in a lot of people's music. Kendrick Lamar is always going to rap about the Black experience in his music. J. Cole is always going to rap about being an underdog in North Carolina and, you know, that biracial, you know, ideology that's in his head. I don't go to artists like Drake to talk about police brutality. You know what I'm saying? I don't go to Beyonce with, even though she made a great body of work with Lemonade, talking about, you know, the Black experience in America. That's just me personally, you know. But I do think that this is still going to be a core factor in a lot of artists' music over the years.
Yeah. I think we have higher expectations for artists now, because at the end of the day, they're humans just like us, and at the end of the day, at compromising intersections, which is what we saw with Megan Thee Stallion. So I think that 2020 has definitely been a pivotal moment, and I'm interested to see in how they engage in politics next year. Kind of like what Jordan said, I don't expect too much from these celebrities. They're not necessarily my idols in a way, I guess. I don't expect very much for them. They're entertainment. Should we be in civil discourse with them? Should we expect them to? No, not necessarily, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think the one reason why we expect so much of them is because we don't want them to be so disconnected from where they came from. Because at the end of the day, you're still human just like us. You still bleed just like us. So you can't act like you're better than us just because you have more money or more status.
Yeah.
And a lot of these artists, they make way for appeasing other people rather than actually sticking to their actual values just for a check.
Yeah. And people do, girl. I would do it too for a check. I'm kidding. A lot of crazy stuff for a check, but I'm interested to see how things evolve after 2020, and how we demand things from the artists. Did you guys have anything else to say, or?
Nope.
All right. So our next topic is media bias and polarized politics. Now, before we talk about how media reigns over politics a lot of the time, I wanted to talk about polarized politics. We understand that American democracy, or representative democracy, is not necessarily, it has an innate function, but it isn't inherently a two-party system. We have the Republican Party, Democratic Party, and we also have a multitude of other parties that fall under the third party, like the Progressives, the Green Party, the Libertarian. Yeah, and even those that spurred from the Prohibition movement. Like, the list is endless. Like, there's hundreds and hundreds. It's freaking crazy. But the way that these candidates campaign, it's essentially focused on mainly the two parties, and sometimes one of the third parties, like the Progressives. So, and we also have to understand that in a lot of these cities, we only have one person representing us, whereas in like a European country, depending on how people vote, they could have multiple representatives from one district. Like, we have one district, a winner takes all one district type of government, I guess. Whereas in a European country, depending on how people vote, they could have multiple. They could have one Republican, like, I'm transferring to American politics. They could have one Republican, one Libertarian, maybe even Progressive, maybe like there's still a couple people in there. So with this winner takes all system, I feel like it's polarized people, and it's caused people to not necessarily understand that democracy is meant to evolve. And because of that, we have these like crazy campaigns, and like where media is just very like done out of self-interest in a way, and only focuses on those two parties. Right. So one thing I wanted to ask you guys was, when did you guys first hear about third party politics, or like any third party in general?
It happened around when I was like in 11th grade, when I was in U.S. history, and we were talking about, you know, the Democratic Republican Party, talking about, and yeah, when I was in 9th grade, when Donald Trump was running for president, ultimately won. That I felt was kind of weird, the third party, because I was thinking to myself, okay, what makes this different from Democratic and Republican? What, you know what I'm saying, what's their job? Can they, you know, actually run for president? All that type of stuff. So those were like the ideas that I was, the questions, I would say, that were in my head during that time period.
Yeah.
All right.
For me, it was during the election of our former President Barack Obama.
All right. How so?
Because I was seeing his rankings compared to the other presidential candidates, and I noticed there was a third party candidate as well, and I was kind of confused.
Yeah. So we understand that in general, people don't necessarily talk about the third party or even necessarily proponents for them taking over. But as I said before, democracy is meant to evolve based off the people's needs. So I feel like since there is a political dichotomy, we only focus on the fact that there can only ever be Republican and only ever be Democratic.
Right.
Well, are infused with like the third party ideas, especially more progressive and green ideas, we have to understand that we can vote for who we want to.
Yeah, but
Keep talking. A lot of the times they're stigmatized because people, especially with the whole socialist thing, we are in an era where like if you say you're socialist, get out, get out.
but most Democratic or Republican parties believe that a vote for the third party candidate is a wasted vote. And that's a lot of the reason why people just settle for whoever.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also why I mentioned the winner take all system, because I feel like if we implemented where we had multiple representatives in like a district that's usually one person representative, it would encourage people to say like, I have a variety of political ideas. However, I don't necessarily have to stick to just one party. You do kind of see what I'm saying? And when people say the wasted vote, it's not necessarily a wasted ideal. It's not necessarily a wasted ideal. And I sometimes irritates me when people say that because I understand it is a wasted vote. However, we can't necessarily, I feel like in the next 100 years, the way that we think about political parties in America is definitely going to change, especially with the whole climate change thing. And that's just a whole nother conversation for another day. But it's not necessarily a wasted vote for me. I feel like we have to have more civil discourse about the ideals of some of these third parties. Yeah, did you guys else say?
Nope.
Yeah. So how?
Did you have something to say?
Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
So the founding fathers' first idea was to have no parties whatsoever, and then we decided to make political parties like a Republican and Democrat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the idea of a third party, the reason why less people know of it is because they're not really in the primaries because
yeah,
they don't have much funding or as many people voting for them, so they don't get the voice as much.
Yeah, that definitely goes back into how these people campaign and the amount of funding that they get, and that also stirs back into what the general topic was media bias that essentially creates polarized politics. Because like you said, one of the first times that I even knew there was a third party was when I looked on my damn TV screen and saw like the Progressive Party only got like 13% of the vote. I'm like, oh wow, who are they? Like, yeah, so so that you made a great point about the founding fathers, not necessarily wanting there to be any political factions. However, naturally people separate and have differing opinions, but I want people, democracy is meant to evolve based off the people's needs. And while a wasted vote is a wasted vote, it's not necessarily a wasted ideal. And it irritates me because these, like you said before, these political parties are running off of campaign funds. And that's only because the media focuses on the dichotomy of the two and not necessarily the other ones. While it sounds kind of crazy to say that we shouldn't necessarily rely on media and do independent research is what's essentially going to bring out the best of these third parties and not have them be stigmatized the way that they are. Because people complain about the two-party system, but then I think to myself that it's not necessarily an inherent function of our Republican democracy. It's meant to evolve. And I do think media plays a large part of it, kind of like what Kristen said before. It depends on the amount of funding that either will get based off the media attention that they have. But I do think that politics are so polarized because people don't necessarily understand that there doesn't have to be an innate two-party system. We can have differing ideals. It doesn't necessarily mean that the whole country's going to go to crap and anarchy is going to be everywhere. And like, yeah. So I just really wanted to talk to you guys about that and learn when you guys were first introduced to there being a third party and not just party a multitude of other parties.
Right.
Doesn't really get talked about that much. So with that being said, do you guys think that eventually the Progressive Party is going to take over? Because I do see the Democrats pulling from a lot of their ideals, a lot of ideals from the Green Party and the Progressive Party. Do you think a third party will ever take over?
I think they might actually have a chance, only because the closest they ever got was last election. Yeah. I think they pulled through at about 1 to 3%, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you about to say, Jordan?
Maybe, maybe, 50, 60 years down the line, then maybe a candidate from the Progressive Party will be president, and then that'll be like the first ever thing in history and all that type of stuff. That's pretty much all I gotta say.
Well, I hope to see the day where that happens. My kids, back in my day, I only thought. I'm kidding. Yeah. Okay, you guys don't have anything else to say about that, or polarized politics and media, or nothing else to say? Wait, okay. So fourth topic, which is voting, a very important topic during this political season and 20 session. Now, one question I wanted to ask you guys was, should the U.S. adopt a new form of voter registration? And you guys probably may already know what this is, but I'm going to introduce our viewers to a term that they may not know. So automatic registration occurs where a citizen goes to a public agency or office like the DMV, and they are automatically registered, or they can choose to opt out. And people say that this is very helpful because it makes sure that the people that need to be registered to vote or typically wouldn't find themselves registering to vote are automatically registered to vote when the question is posed to them at the DMV or any other federal agency that they go to. Now, Georgia is actually very important in this conversation, because when we did AVR, or automatic voter registration, we had like a 93% increase of people that were registered to vote during 2018 midterms. And that's crazy. Like, I'm wondering why these people weren't voting before. So because of that, do you think that AVR, or automatic voter registration, should be a national mandate?
I personally think it should, because that's how I actually registered to vote. I went to my local DMV, and then they, helped me and all that type of stuff, and I was registered to vote. Yeah, I think that's pretty much how it should be, and it's much more of a simpler way to do it, instead of, hey, fill out such and such and such and such, and there you go, you're in.
Yeah. I think it would be a viable option for the future, especially considering not a whole lot of people know how to register, which is why the NAACP and a whole lot of sorority and fraternities have voting events.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely.
Instagram. I know on Instagram they had like a little register to vote tab and all that type of stuff. When I was watching that, when I was scrolling through it, I was like, okay, this is cool, but just go to your, and it makes sense because, everyone has Instagram, so it's much easier. But when I went, it was like, okay, you're approved right there. With Instagram, it was like, okay, it kind of took you like 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? To do that.
Yeah.
I sent mine through the mail.
Yeah.
Yeah, voter registration can be pretty lengthy, and depending on your socioeconomic status, you might not have the time, resources, money, vehicle, transportation to be able to get registered. And oftentimes we find people obviously needing to go to these federal agencies like the DMV, like maybe to like update their license or something. So I think it's perfect for that. However, one con is what I call the California issue, where these defunct federal agencies like the DMV aren't necessarily caught up, like technology wise. So they have these computers and computer systems that can't take the fluxation of all these people coming in to get automatically registered. During the midterms, saw that they had a lot of problems essentially, and like one of them being whenever someone would like click their ballot or like automatically get registered and click with a certain political party, they came back and found out that the people's initial political party wasn't on the final ballot. Like, they registered for a certain political party. However, the system showed that they were registered with another. And some people call it like the dinosaur issue, like these older facilities that can't necessarily take these new mandates. So if it were to be nationally mandated, we would definitely have to make sure that these facilities are ready to take an influx of people. And yeah, that's my main issue. We don't have time for voter fraud. We don't have time for, it looks like you weren't actually registered. Please go back to the DMV. Like, I just don't have time for it. We have to. Yeah. Why are y'all laughing?
No, because we was
I wasn't laughing.
No,
huh?
We were
smiling.
Y'all were laughing. That's so funny. Yeah. Y'all were here. But I guess I'm gonna read some stuff out to you guys. All so right. Around 15 states have at one point enacted some form of AVR, including Georgia. Okay. Of the states that enacted it before the 2018 midterm elections, 2.2 million people were automatically registered, and nearly 6 million had their registration updated. Mm-hmm. And these are people that would have had to actually at one point actually go back out and like actually physically register for themselves. Like 2.2 million people were registered automatically through the DMV system. That is amazing to me. And Georgia had one of the highest registration turnouts. Like, we literally were the highest. That's crazy. Yeah. However, the turnout rate of automatic voter registrations was much lower than the overall states turnout. And that poses the question, if people aren't already registered to vote, would they have wanted to vote in the first place? So the opt-out system kind of alleviates that problem, because it makes sure that everyone is already automatically registered to vote. And if you don't want to vote, you could just opt out. Whereas we have all these people that essentially might need and want to vote, however, they don't have the time to actually go physically register. So I just wanted to read those stats out to you guys, because I think it's crazy that nearly like 6 million people have their registrations updated through the DMV system. And oftentimes we see people aren't able to vote when they get to the polls because their crap isn't updated and they get turned away. And that's absolutely ridiculous. I think it should be a national mandate.
Right.
But did you guys have anything else to say? I'm sorry.
Nope.
All right. All right, well, that finishes this podcast. I think this is like podcast 10, maybe.
8.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Achonti. All right, everybody. Thank y'all for watching the 1025 podcast. I'm Jordan, along with Achonti and Kristen. I literally pointed at fuck it. Achonti and Kristen, we will see you next time. Peace.
Bye.